For 4 years, Tyler Brennan made it his personal mission to remind me that I didn't matter. Locker slammed shut with my hand still in it. Textbooks knocked out of my arms in the hallway while his friends laughed. A nickname that followed me from freshman year to graduation day that I'm not going to repeat, because I don't give it power anymore. I left for Army basic training the morning after I got my diploma. I didn't go to a single reunion. I didn't keep in touch with anyone from that school. I built an entire life on the other side of that chapter, brick by brick, without looking back once. 12 years later, Tyler Brennan sat across from me in a glass conference room, nervous, sweating slightly under his blazer, pitching himself for a director position at the company I founded. He had no idea who I was. I let him finish his pitch. And then I reached into my desk drawer, and I set my purple heart on the table between us. Welcome back to Kayla's Dark Truth. If you've ever had to become someone unrecognizable just to escape that person you used to be, stay with me for this one. Comment when you get to the interview scene. I want to know if you saw the twist coming. And subscribe, because the quiet ones always come back stronger. My name is Maya Reyes. I'm 30 years old, and I'm the founder and CEO of a logistics software company called Threadline. We build supply chain tools for small manufacturers, the unglamorous kind of software nobody talks about at parties but that keeps actual factories running on time. We're 26 employees now. 4 years ago, it was just me and a laptop in a one-bedroom apartment. But before any of that, I was a 15-year-old girl at Kensington High School who did everything possible to become invisible, because visibility was dangerous. I want to be clear about something before I keep going. I wasn't an easy target because I was weak. I was quiet, I was smart, I skipped a grade in middle school, and I dressed differently than most of the girls at that school because my family didn't have money for the right brands. Tyler Brennan noticed all of that within the first week of freshman year, and he decided I was going to be his project. It started small. Comments in the hallway. My homework accidentally knocked out of my hands. By sophomore year it had escalated. My locker jammed shut with gum in the lock more times than I could count. A rumor spread about me that took months to die down. Notes left in my bag that I still remember word for word even now, 12 years later, even though I've tried very hard not to. Teachers saw pieces of it. Nobody saw all of it. That's usually how it works. I never told my parents the full extent, because by 16 I'd already decided that surviving it quietly was easier than explaining it out loud. The day after graduation, I signed my enlistment paperwork. I'd already been talking to a recruiter for almost a year by that point, quietly, without telling anyone at school. I wanted structure. I wanted a place where the rules were the same for everyone, where you earned respect through what you did, not who your friends were. The Army gave me exactly that. I served 6 years, including one deployment to Afghanistan in 2018, working in logistics and supply operations, which, looking back, is probably where I first fell in love with the problem I eventually built a company to solve. During that deployment, our convoy was hit by an IED outside a forward operating base. I took shrapnel in my left leg and shoulder. I was awarded a Purple Heart for it, along with 2 of the soldiers I served with. I don't talk about that day often, and I'm not going to walk through the details here, except to say that I was luckier than I probably deserved to be, and 2 people I loved very much were not as lucky. I finished my enlistment, used the GI Bill to get a business degree, and spent 2 years working at a logistics startup before I decided to build my own. Threadline launched 4 years ago. It was slow at first, the kind of slow where you're doing your own customer support at midnight and eating cereal for dinner because you forgot to buy groceries. But it grew. Steadily, then quickly. By last year, we'd raised a Series A and moved into a real office with 26 people who depend on me to make good decisions. I tell you all of this not to brag, but because I want you to understand exactly how far away that scared 15-year-old girl was from the woman sitting in that conference room 12 years later. I had built an entirely different life. I genuinely never expected the two to collide. We were hiring for a director of operations role, a senior position, someone who'd help me scale the supply chain side of the business as we grew. My head of HR, a sharp woman named Priya who'd been with me since year 2, sent over the final round candidates for me to personally interview, since this hire would report directly to me. I remember scanning the resumes on a Tuesday morning with a coffee in hand, not paying particularly close attention until I got to the third name. Tyler Brennan. I sat with that name for a long moment. It's not an uncommon name, and I told myself it probably wasn't him. But something made me open the attached photo on his LinkedIn profile. It was him. Older, heavier, a receding hairline he clearly wasn't happy about based on the careful way he'd combed it. But it was unmistakably him. I sat at my desk for almost 20 minutes after that, just thinking. Part of me wanted to have Priya quietly remove him from the candidate pool and never think about it again. That would have been the easy choice, and honestly, for a while, I almost made it. But another part of me, the part that had spent 4 years in that hallway, wishing someone, anyone, would make him face what he was doing, wanted something different. I wanted to sit across from him. I wanted to see if he even remembered me at all. I told Priya to keep him in the pool. I scheduled the final interview myself. He walked into our conference room on a Thursday afternoon in a blazer that looked slightly too tight, the kind of outfit someone wears when they're trying hard to look like they belong somewhere they're not entirely sure they do. He shook my hand, said, "Great to meet you, thanks so much for the opportunity," with the kind of practiced warmth people learn in sales roles. He did not recognize me. Not even a flicker. I understood why, honestly. I'd changed a lot, different hair, different posture, 12 years of a different life written into my face. And I don't think Tyler Brennan ever really looked at me back then. Not as a full person. I was a target, not a face he needed to remember. We went through the interview normally for the first 20 minutes. He talked about his background, 5 years in operations at a mid-size logistics firm, a layoff 18 months ago, a rougher stretch since then working for a smaller company that was struggling. He talked about wanting to be part of something meaningful. He talked about growth mindset and collaborative culture, the vocabulary of someone who'd clearly practiced this pitch in the mirror. I asked him standard questions. How he'd handle a supply chain disruption. How he'd manage a direct report who was underperforming. He answered competently. He wasn't a bad candidate on paper, which honestly made the whole thing stranger. This wasn't a villain twirling a mustache. This was a 30-year-old man trying to get a job to support what I later learned was a wife and a 2-year-old daughter. Near the end of the interview, I asked him a question I don't normally ask candidates. "Did you go to Kensington High School?" He blinked, surprised. "Yeah, actually. Class of 2014. "Same," I said. "I was in your grade." He studied my face for a moment, clearly searching, clearly coming up empty. "I'm sorry, I don't. Did we have classes together?" "A few," I said. You probably don't remember me. Maya Reyes. I watched something shift behind his eyes, not full recognition, not yet, more like a name trying to locate a memory it couldn't quite place. Maya. I feel like that rings a bell, but honestly, high school's a blur for me. I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. Then I reached into my desk drawer, and I set a small velvet box on the table between us. Do you know what this is? He looked at it, confused. Should I open it? Go ahead. He opened it. Inside sat my Purple Heart, the medal I'd been awarded after that convoy in 2018, the one I keep in my desk not for show, but because on hard days it reminds me what I actually survived. I'm not sure I understand, he said. I earned this in Afghanistan in 2018, I said. Shrapnel in my leg and shoulder. 2 people I served with didn't come home from that deployment. I let that sit for a second. I enlisted the day after our graduation, Tyler. I wanted you to know that, because I think it might help you remember who I am. I watched it land. Slowly, then all at once, the way memory sometimes works when you've spent years actively not thinking about something. His face changed color. His hands, which had been resting confidently on the table, pulled back slightly into his lap. Maya Reyes, he said quietly, like he was testing whether saying it out loud would make it more or less true. From Freshman English. You sat 2 rows over. I sat 2 rows over for 4 years, I said. You knocked my books out of my hands more times than I can count. You jammed my locker shut so many times I started keeping my textbooks in my backpack instead, just so I wouldn't have to deal with it. You started a rumor sophomore year that took until junior year to fully die down. He was quiet. Genuinely quiet, not performing it. I don't really remember specifics, he said finally, and I believed him, which was somehow worse than if he'd lied. I know I wasn't a good person back then. I was going through a lot at home, that's not an excuse, he stopped. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I didn't think about any of that in years. I know, I said. That's usually how it works for the person doing it. It doesn't work that way for the person it happens to. I want to pause the story here, because this is the part where I imagine a lot of people expect me to say I fired him on the spot, or humiliated him, or made him beg. That's not what happened, and honestly, I'd thought about that moment for years without ever actually planning what I'd do if it came. What I actually felt, sitting there, was something quieter than revenge. I felt the enormous distance between who he used to be able to make me feel like, small, invisible, powerless, and who I actually was now, sitting in a chair I built myself, holding a medal I earned doing something he could never have imagined that scared 15-year-old girl becoming capable of. I didn't need him to suffer for that distance to feel real. It already was real. It had been real for years, whether he ever found out or not. I'm going to be honest with you, I told him. Your qualifications are solid. If I ignore everything else, you'd probably do fine in this role. But you're not going to ignore everything else, he said quietly. No, I said. I'm not going to hire the person who spent 4 years teaching me I didn't matter. Not because I want to punish you for it now. But because I don't owe you access to what I built out of surviving that. He nodded slowly, and to his credit, he didn't argue, didn't try to negotiate his way out of it, didn't get defensive. That's fair, he said. That's more than fair, honestly. He stood up to leave. At the door, he turned around. For what it's worth, he said, I am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. But I am. I know, I said. I believe you. It just doesn't change the decision. He left the building, and I never saw him again. I told Priya to move forward with our second choice candidate, a woman named Angela who ended up being an excellent hire, and who has no idea any of this happened. I sat alone in that conference room for a long time after he left, the Purple Heart still sitting open on the table. I didn't feel triumphant, exactly. I felt something steadier than that, a kind of quiet closure I hadn't realized I was still waiting for. I don't know what happened to Tyler Brennan after that interview. Part of me hopes he found something else, that his daughter is doing fine, that whatever he was going through at home all those years ago that he alluded to didn't repeat itself in some other kid's hallway. I mean that honestly. Surviving what he put me through didn't require me to wish him ruin. It just required me to stop being available to him. For years, I thought healing from what happened in that hallway would look like some big dramatic confrontation, the kind where the bully finally gets what's coming to them and you get to watch. What I learned instead is that real power doesn't need to perform itself. It doesn't need to humiliate anyone to prove it's real. Sometimes it just needs to sit calmly at a table, hold the thing you earned surviving what they put you through, and simply decline to give them anything else. If somebody made you feel small once, and you're still building the life that proves them wrong, I want you to know you don't owe them a dramatic reckoning to make it count. You already won the moment you kept going. That's my story. If this one meant something to you, tell me in the comments. Did you expect me to hire him, or fire him on the spot? And if you know someone who's still healing from their own hallway, share this with them. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.